Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm keeping this October tradition of sticking with nothing but Halloween-related videos. I'm really excited to talk about this one because I'm going to talk about one of my favorite games and one of my favorite franchises of all time, Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil was released almost 20 years ago, so we're coming up on the 20th anniversary. It came out in early '96. And I remember the game vividly as one of my friends who had the PlayStation back then picked up the game when it was brand new. I didn't get a PlayStation until summer of '96, so I didn't get Resident Evil until after it was already out for a few months. I mean, the game was scary. It was way ahead of its time. We really didn't know how to play it too well back then. But by now, almost 20 years later, Resident Evil is pretty much a household name. It spawned a whole bunch of sequels and several shitty movies. Now, what a lot of people may not know is Resident Evil actually started out as a remake for an older Capcom game from 1989 called Sweet Home, which was only released in Japan for the Nintendo Famicom system. Now, this game arguably started the whole survival horror genre, and Resident Evil took a lot of inspiration from it. So what originally intended to be a remake turned out to be its own unique game, and has since become one of Capcom's most storied franchises. Now, if we look at some of these games that are in the Resident Evil library, it's easy to see why this is one of my favorite franchises. I mean, you got the first Resident Evil, which is the one we're going to be covering today. Resident Evil 2, which was also very good. And my favorite on the PlayStation, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. This one is really excellent. But it went on from there. I mean, there weren't just three. They even remade the first game for the GameCube with an excellent remake. They made it longer, the graphics better, and then they remade the remake with an HD remaster, which I have downloaded on my PS3. Game is only $20. I recommend downloading it. It is excellent. But then we also have Code Veronica X for the PlayStation 2, and then my all-time favorite in the series, Resident Evil 4, which I have a couple copies here. I have the PlayStation 2 copy. I also have the Wii copy where you can actually fire the gun using the Wii remote. And then I also have the HD remastered version, which is my favorite version to play. But we're not done there. We also have Resident Evil 0, which is actually a prequel to the first one. And then we have the excellent Resident Evil 5, if you notice here. I'm wearing the shirt. Resident Evil 5. I put over 100 hours into this game. I love it. Resident Evil 6 is also excellent. It's more action-oriented, but that's fine. It's a great game. And then we have a couple of spin-offs here. I got Resident Evil Revelations, which is pretty good. There's also Resident Evil Revelations 2, which I downloaded. You can also get a physical copy. That's pretty good as well. And that's not even all of the Resident Evil games. There's even more spin-offs. Those are my favorites, though. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a look at the game, see how it holds up 20 years later. Now, what I did is I went ahead and played through the game using Jill over Chris, because Jill has several advantages over Chris. One being that she can carry a lockpick. Two, she can actually hold 2 more items than Chris in the inventory, which is a huge advantage. Now, where Jill keeps those extra 2 items, we'll leave that to the imagination. Regardless, she's the better character to use, so let's go ahead and take a look at this game 20 years later, see how it holds up. And I need to warn you right now, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, here's your warning. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at Resident Evil.
Resident Evil begins with a movie-like intro, which at the time was pretty awesome considering any storytelling done in video games in the past required you to read all of the text and dialogue. Before the term computer-generated imagery became a household name, actors were hired to give the latest generation of games that cinematic element. Bad actors.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
The STARS team is dispatched to investigate the disappearance of other members in the wake of a viral outbreak in Raccoon City. Upon landing their helicopter in an open field, a severed hand is discovered before a pack of bloodthirsty mutant dogs attack, killing Joseph Frost. The remaining STARS members run for their lives before stumbling across what is presumed to be an abandoned mansion and rush inside to take cover. We are then introduced to the cast, including Jill Valentine, a real-life departure from the archetypical CG-rendered voluptuous female protagonist that we've currently been accustomed to. The actress that portrays Jill is actually kinda cute, unlike the pooch that was rendered for the HD remake. Woof! We're also introduced to that little shit Albert Wesker, and to satisfy the Japanese obsession with ephebophilia, Rebecca Chambers was also thrown in.
Resident Evil.
Now this is where the fun begins. Wait a minute, hold everything. You mean to tell me that America got the watered-down black and white censored version? What the hell? What was Capcom USA protecting us from? Well, this, I guess. Oh, and cigarettes. Here in the United States, displays of tobacco consumption is a cardinal sin. You can blow off as many heads as you like, but if we show Chris Redfield smoking a cigarette, well, what kind of example would we be setting for our youth? Apparently this was done in an effort to avoid a mature rating, which, as we all know by now, Resident Evil earned anyway. Well, no use crying about it now, because once the members of STARS decide to split up to cover more ground in the gigantic house, Jill comes face to face with a hungry maniac snacking on her comrade Kenneth. Human meat is kinda gamey. Obviously, something's not right in this house, and being the good subservient subordinate that she is, Jill decides it would be best to report her find to Wesker.
Anyway, let's report this to Wesker.
Of course, Wesker is nowhere to be found, and Barry decides he and Jill should split up, but not before delivering one of the most notoriously terrible and cheesy lines in all of cinematic gaming.
Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
That's right, Resident Evil is infamous for having some of the worst, if not the worst, in-game voice acting in all of video games. The funny thing is Japan's version of Resident Evil, Biohazard, had Japanese dialogue recorded for the game, which was then scrapped in favor for the English version, because as the game's designer Shinji Mikami said, he felt the quality of the Japanese voices were inadequate.
This.
Really? Worse than this?
Jill! Don't scare me.
That's what I was going to say.
I find that hard to believe. After discovering yet another fallen STARS member, Jill searches and investigates some more and comes in contact with zombies. These seem to be more of the George Romero variety, slow and stupid, with an insatiable lust for human flesh. Now at the time, these monsters looked very realistic for our standards, and with preset camera angles combined with pre-rendered backgrounds, created a dark and spooky environment, with mystery hiding in the shadows behind every unseen corner, and created a sense of dread and anxiety when exploring the mansion. Add to that clunky controls, and you've got a recipe for some messy boxer shorts. There's no denying that the house was crafted with an appetite for the macabre, borrowing elements from several horror films such as Sweet Home, and taking inspiration from the Overlook Hotel, the setting from the 1980s flick, The Shining.
Here's Johnny.
Anytime I visit a local haunted house around Halloween, I lose my shit if it shares any resemblance whatsoever with the Spencer Mansion. This house definitely put me at unease the first time I explored it back in '96. I have to say the house looks so spooky and realistic, my girlfriend at the time couldn't bear to watch me play it in fear of nightmares. Well, that worked for me, as it was the perfect way to get her to give me some much needed space. You end up running across more of Cerberus's minions, and even plants aren't exempt from whatever curse infects this house. Thankfully, there's plenty of uninfected wacky weed to use when close to death. And whoever designed the house sure loves their puzzles, and I'm not talking about the likes of Sudoku either. The mansion is riddled with extravagant puzzles such as opening a wall by playing the Moonlight Sonata on the piano. This is another advantage of using Jill over Chris, as she has the musical talent to solve this particular puzzle, where Chris would be lucky if he could get a sound from banging two pots together. Jill has definitely got it. Having a limited amount of space to carry items is a staple within the Resident Evil series and has been implemented in each subsequent release since. Hoarding items in the many storage boxes littered around is a must, and luckily any items stored can be retrieved from any of the boxes, regardless of where they were stashed. Can you believe that Capcom originally intended to make the US version to where you can only retrieve stored items from the exact box it was originally placed in? The American version of Resident Evil already has less ammo to pick up than the Japanese one. Thank God they mercifully decided not to fuck with our boxes. This feature is available in hard mode on the remake. Back in '96, I had to restart this game numerous times before I realized that you need to conserve your items and ammo and manage them efficiently. It took more strategy back then than it does in today's more action-oriented Resident Evil. Now before long you run into yet another STARS member, only this one isn't dead.
Richard, hold on.
There is serum. Oh no, I should have brought some with me.
No problem. I'll go and get it.
By the time you return with the serum, it's too late.
No! Richard!
And after a zombie pukes on you, you find yourself face to face with Richard's killer. No, I'm not tired. That's the snake's name. Yawn. Yawn slithers away in retreat after pumping a few acid rounds into him. As large as the house is, clues eventually lead you to outside through a garden, which brings you to an abandoned guardhouse. Or is it? Once again you run into Barry and practice some more acting.
So you heard it too. I think I'm getting old. It seems that talking to myself is becoming a habit.
And down in the depths of the guardhouse, like in all basements, you discover pesky critters on the loose. Somebody call an exterminator. Your skills as a chemist will come into play as you mix together a deadly cocktail for yet another angry herb. This formula is fairly simple and doesn't take a Walter White wannabe to concoct. With poisoned roots, that mutant plant won't stand a chance against Jill's firepower. And yields exactly what you've been looking for. The final mansion key. As soon as you step back into the mansion, all is not well. A new green ugly son of a bitch rushes for you with razor-sharp claws and reptile-like reflexes. The Hunter. The first time I encountered a hunter, I about shit myself, and once I had discovered that there were now many more throughout the house, I stopped playing and didn't come back to Resident Evil until I had already completed parts 2 and 3. Basically, my skills at Resident Evil weren't up to par in '96, and it took conquering the next 2 installments to really learn how to play. Once I mastered those 2, I returned to the original with a vengeance, but still wary of those goddamned dreaded hunters. Speaking of reptiles, guess who's back? That's right, our good old buddy Yawn. Just as with the first battle, Yawn's a pushover, and then Barry's dumbass stumbles in, asking Jill if she's seen anything interesting, as Yawn's corpse dissolves beneath his very own feet.
Jill, Have you found anything interesting?
Very perceptive there, Barry. And what does he do for an encore? Drops the fucking rope, for Christ's sakes.
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it. Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
Stars would be better off employing Larry, Curly, and Moe for this job. How the hell did this group of bumblefucks ever make it out of the first game alive? A quick run through the mansion's basement before Jill is encountered with yet another spooky cutscene. After dispatching this latest undead freak, Jill rides a service elevator to an unexplored section of the top floor, where she comes across a room filled with ancient relics. More hunters roam the halls, and the fact that the quick turn wasn't invented until Resident Evil 3 makes your encounters with these green assholes that much more difficult and frustrating. While up to this point, I can say this game has been holding up pretty well 20 years later, the clunky, slow controls definitely show their age, and is one of the reasons this game can be so damn hard. Jill returns to the courtyard and jams the flow of the waterfall to access the door that had been behind it. Once inside, she finds herself in an underground cavern, where she meets up with Barry, and they discover another Fallen Stars member who has some very interesting things to say.
The stars are doomed. Someone is a traitor. Everything was plotted from the start by Umbrella.
Enrico? Enrico? Enrico is a Spanish name, you idiot. It's not like encore or ensemble. Barry said it right. I really hope these actors didn't get paid much. After Jill picks up the crank off of a dead Enrico, she's able to move further along the dark, damp corridors, which is the perfect environment for... Hope you don't have arachnophobia. Of course a bazooka beats raid any day, so let the fucker have it. So up to this point, I have to say that I'm very impressed with how the game is coming along. Not only is there a large mansion to explore, but also a guardhouse and catacomb-like caves. The different types of enemies the game throws at you is impressive, and I have to marvel at how unique this game was for its time. You could even argue that it was ahead of its time to begin with. I'm sure many gave up on this adventure as I had because of the nuances and standout game mechanics, which made this game a lot different than anything else out there in the mid-90s. But not finishing this game is a huge mistake because it was simply incredible, and still is at the age of 20 despite the controls. And completing the adventure will only solidify its illustrious legacy. So let's take a look at the last leg, shall we? A hidden underground laboratory is the setting for the final showdown. Wailing zombies inhabit the lab, along with mutant insects. More clues unravel the twisted plans of the Umbrella Pharmaceuticals Corporation, death and destruction imminent. Jill locates a prison cell within the lab to discover... Chris? What are you doing in there, you silly goose?
It doesn't work. Well, Chris, I'll be sure to come back and help you soon. Will you wait here?
Thanks. I'll be waiting here for you.
Will you wait here? Really, Jill? What a comedian. Like a bad penny, Barry shows up again to engage in another scene of impressive acting.
Jill, you're here too.
Yes, you're here too?
Look, I lost my way.
After sharing an elevator, guess who we run into?
Wesker?
You did a fine job, Barry.
Just as I thought.
Barry, you fucking bastard.
I think you should stay away.
So Wesker was Umbrella's puppet all along. A pharmaceutical company controlling people like marionettes? Boy, that sounds familiar. But wait, it's Barry! He's come to his senses! And here I thought he was just another traitorous piece of shit. Time to take this motherfucker down. Oh, but not so fast. This is where we come face to face with Umbrella's most diabolical creation yet, the Tyrant.
Tyrant is not completely developed.
You mean his balls haven't dropped yet? He's just an awkward, prepubescent, ugly as sin mutant? Sounds like the best time to kill it. That is, until this happens. While he should be a tough boss, looking as intimidating as he does, he's no match against a fully loaded Magnum, and a few slugs will drop this bitch like a bag of dirt.
What happened to Wesker?
The triggering system has now been activated.
Wesker's gone and must have tripped the self-destruct mechanism. Now, if you played Metroid or Bionic Commando, then you know the drill. Get out. But first, we gotta get Chris out of that cell. He is waiting for us, after all.
Oh, Jill!
Sorry for keeping you waiting.
After Jill makes her way to the roof, she fires a flare in the sky to alert Brad and his helicopter to where the extraction point is. But it's not gonna be that easy, is it? Oh, hell no. Not if the Tyrant has something to say about it. Well, we know how much he likes to eat lead, so feed him some more Magnum rounds and Brad will toss down a rocket launcher to finish the job. Blasts his ass in spite of clunky controls and washes a shower of limbs and viscera paints the rooftop. Mission complete. Jill, Chris, and Barry make it out to live another day and attend another acting class. Bravo. So I gotta say that 20 years later, this game holds up pretty damn well. It's definitely challenging, but when you've played the HD remake as much as I have, you can pretty much get around Spencer Mansion with your eyes closed. So if you've never played this one, check it out. It's available on the PS3 as a download for $10, and the disc can be found for about the same price. My main gripe, as you've heard throughout this review, are the controls, and it may turn a lot of people off as you must press up to move forward at all times, and the absence of the quick turn makes fighting monsters a real pain in the ass. But there's no denying that this is one of the most important games to ever be released on a home console, and the legacy it's cemented in gaming, I'm sure will continue on for another 2 decades and more.